The stage lights were blinding, the cameras rolling, and the entire auditorium filled with proud parents and students. A young black girl stood on stage, her hands trembling as she held the award she had worked years to earn. For her, this was more than a certificate. It was proof that her hard work and resilience had finally been recognized. But in the very moment she should have been celebrated, everything shattered. The teacher beside her ripped the award into pieces, live on national television. Gasps filled the air, the fragments fluttering like broken dreams. Yet within seconds, his cruel smile would vanish, and a shocking twist would leave millions demanding justice. What would you do if someone tried to destroy everything you worked for? Stick with this story until the end. You'll want to see what happens next. That night, the school auditorium was filled with excitement. Parents sat in neatly arranged rows, phones ready to record the proudest moments of their children. Teachers lined the aisles waiting to see their students celebrated, while cameras streamed the ceremony live for the local community. On stage, banners hung high with words like excellence and achievement. Among the students waiting, nervously backstage, was a young black girl who had worked harder than anyone could see. Her journey wasn't easy. At home, she often studied late into the night, sometimes by candlelight when the electricity bill couldn't be paid on time. Her mother worked long hours to support her, constantly reminding her that education was the way forward. And despite the struggles, she never gave up. At school, she wasn't just smart, she was determined. She entered competitions, volunteered in clubs, and always went the extra mile. But she also carried an invisible weight. The stereotypes, the quiet doubts, the looks that told her some people didn't expect her to succeed. She knew she had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously, and she did. Her grades soared. Her teachers, most of them, recognized her brilliance. Her classmates admired her persistence. She had earned this award not just by being good at her subjects, but by refusing to quit when everything around her told her to stop. Yet not everyone celebrated her success. One teacher in particular seemed to view her accomplishments as a personal insult. His remarks in class, the way he dismissed her answers, the cold stares, it all hinted at something darker. While the world was ready to honor her, he carried resentment, waiting for the moment to remind her of her place. That night, under the blinding lights, that moment came. The girl's name was called, and the auditorium erupted in applause. She walked toward the stage with her heart pounding, each step carrying the weight of years of sacrifice. When she finally reached the podium, the announcer placed the framed certificate in her hands. For a moment, everything felt perfect. She had done it. The audience clapped louder, some parents standing to cheer, others recording the moment on their phones. The cameras zoomed in, catching the sparkle in her eyes as she smiled with pride. But beside her, the teacher shifted uncomfortably. His jaw tightened, his fist clenched at his side. While the audience saw a supportive mentor, he hid bitterness behind a stiff smile. To him, this award wasn't proof of her brilliance. It was a challenge to his authority. This wasn't the first time his resentment had shown. In class, he often cut her off when she tried to speak, or claimed her victories were the result of luck. He praised others openly but rarely acknowledged her, no matter how exceptional her work was. She had learned to ignore it, telling herself that her grades spoke louder than his silence. But deep down, she knew his dislike was rooted in more than simple unfairness. It was prejudice. And now on stage, his mask slipped. In one swift motion, he snatched the award from her hands. Gasps filled the auditorium. The girl froze, her smile fading into shock. Before she or anyone else could react, the teacher tore the certificate into jagged pieces. The sound of ripping paper echoed across the room, carried by the microphones. Placed too close. The fragments fluttered to the floor like falling leaves. The applause died instantly. Parents covered their mouths, students whispered in horror, and the cameraman instinctively zoomed in, capturing every detail for the live broadcast. If you believe no student should ever face this kind of injustice, hit the like button so more people hear this story. For a moment, the teacher stood tall, his smug grin stretching across his face. But the weight of silence around him quickly shifted. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't respect. It was fury. Whispers rippled through the auditorium, then grew louder, swelling into shouts. Parents stood from their seats pointing angrily, demanding answers. Students gasped, some yelling in disbelief, others holding up their phones to capture every second. The cameras that had once highlighted the celebration now locked onto the teacher's every move, exposing his cruelty to the world. The young girl remained on stage, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Her tears glistened, but they didn't fall. Instead, she fixed her gaze forward unbroken, refusing to let him claim the moment entirely. That quiet strength, standing tall in the face of humiliation, spoke louder than anything the teacher had tried to prove. Meanwhile, the teacher's confidence began to crumble. He shifted nervously under the blinding lights, the crowd's voices closing in like a wave. His smirk faltered, his eyes darted from camera to audience, realizing too late what he had done. What he thought was power was now evidence of hate, broadcast live for thousands to see. School officials rushed onto the stage. One administrator bent quickly to gather the torn pieces of the award. At the same time, another placed a protective arm around the girl's shoulders. The teacher tried to protest, but his words were drowned out by the outrage echoing through the room. Online, the story spread instantly. Clips of the act appeared on social media within minutes, tagged with words like racism, disgrace, and justice. What was meant to be a moment of humiliation for one girl became a public scandal, a mirror reflecting the ugly truth of prejudice within education. The teacher's face flushed as he realized there was no undoing this. He had ripped a certificate, but in doing so, he had torn away his own reputation. In that instant, the power shifted. The teacher was no longer in control, the girl was. The uproar in the auditorium did not end that night. It was only the beginning. By morning, the incident had spread nationwide. News anchors replayed the shocking footage, commentators debated it on television, and social media burned with outrage. Hashtags demanding accountability trended across platforms. Parents, activists, and even strangers who had never met the girl spoke out, demanding justice. The school board had no choice but to act. Within days, the teacher was suspended, his name linked permanently to an act of cruelty that no apology could erase. Investigations uncovered patterns in his behavior, moments students had stayed silent about until now. His career, once steady, collapsed under the weight of truth. But the girl's story didn't end with his downfall. It rose far above it. Community leaders stepped forward praising her courage. A local university announced a scholarship in her name, ensuring that her future would not be defined by the attempt to belittle her. Donations poured in to support her education, each message carrying words of encouragement. "We believe in you. Keep going." Most importantly, children across the country watched her response. They saw not just the injustice she suffered, but the way she stood tall, refusing to bow her head. Her quiet strength became a symbol, proof that dignity cannot be torn apart like paper. Months later, when she walked across another stage to accept a new award, the applause was thunderous. This time it wasn't just for her academic achievements, it was for her resilience, her courage, and her ability to turn pain into power. This young girl's courage turned pain into power. Share this story to inspire others who may be facing the same struggles. The torn certificate was gone, but her story lived on. A reminder that racism seeks to break spirits but often ends up revealing a truth it cannot hide. That hate destroys itself, while courage multiplies. And now, I ask you, when faced with injustice, will you stay silent? Or will you rise just as she did? Comment your thoughts below.